The Washingtonian Society by Bob K. Jack Alexander, Saturday Evening Post, was also one of the friends to whom Bill sent material. Of the 12 tradition essays, Alexander has this to say: "The only serious, in my view, defect is that you've treated the old Washingtonian Society too briefly. Most people never heard of it. See Pass It On, page 354. In the 21st century, AA members generally have heard of the movement, but often in snippets that have been distorted in the various retransmissions. With thanks mainly to William L. White, here's an account of the principal details of the early mutual aid group. Chapter: The Drunkard's Mind and Heart. How much more influence than has the man who stands before an audience to persuade them to abandon the use of strong drink, when he can himself tell them of its ruinous and blasting effects on his own life and character, trace the program of his own habits of intemperance, and warn others to avoid the rock on which he spit? A reformed man has the best access to a drunkard's mind and heart, because he best knows and can enter into a drunkard's feelings. And such appeals from such sources, properly directed, can rarely fail of entire success. John Zug, The Foundation, Progress, and Principles of the Washingtonian Temperance Society of Baltimore, John D. Troy, 1842. The arrival of 1840 in America saw a temperance movement that was fragmented and in decline. The shift from moderation to total abstinence, emerging advocacy for the legal prohibition of alcohol, and conflict regarding its stand on the abolition of slavery had hurt the organization's membership. It was also recognized that what it needed was some means of reforming the drunkard. Chapter: The Chase Tavern. On April 2nd, 1840, 6 members of a drinking club at the Chase Tavern in Baltimore, Maryland, were prompted by an argument with the proprietor to send a delegation to investigate a temperance lecture being given that very night by the Reverend Matthew Hale Smith. See Slaying the Dragon, The History of Addiction and Recovery in America, 2nd edition, page 13. Further discussion led, the following day, to the formation of the Washingtonian Total Abstinence Society. William Mitchell, John Haas, David Anderson, George Steers, James McCurley, and Archibald Campbell all signed the pledge drafted by Mitchell. We, whose names are annexed, desirous of forming a society for mutual benefit, and to guard against a pernicious practice which is injurious to our health, standing, and families, do pledge ourselves as gentlemen that we will not drink any spirituous or malt liquor, wine, or cider. Unlike other temperance groups, which tended to be led by and composed of the social elite, the Washingtonians were from the artisan and working classes. Chapter: Experiencing Sharing. The main bill of fare at a Washingtonian meeting was experience sharing, confessions of alcoholic debauchery, followed by glorious accounts of personal reformation. As each newcomer came forward, he was asked to tell a little of his own story, then sign the abstinence pledge amidst the cheers of onlookers. This ritual of public confession and public signing of the pledge carried great emotional power for those participating. It evoked, at least temporarily, what would be described 100 years later as ego deflation and surrender. See Dragon, page 14. The converts immediately sought others. Let every man be present, and every man bring a man. The proselytizing effort was highly organized, with ward committees taking charge of given areas. The sequence of drinker recruiting drinker led to rapid growth. From the beginnings as a working-class movement, the Washingtonians recruited a growing number of the affluent and famous, including 2 men who became mayors, 1 who became governor of his state, and several members of Congress. See Dragon, page 14. Chapter: Closed Meetings. Until November of 1840, Washingtonian meetings were not open to outsiders and, as such, constituted the first widespread closed meetings of alcoholics banded together for mutual support and recovery. See Dragon, page 15. All of this took place a full century before Alcoholics Anonymous. Public meetings led to a change in primary purpose. Initially, a society for reformed drunks, the only requirement for membership became the pledge of personal abstinence. The speed with which the membership changed was quite remarkable. By June of 1841, the Washingtonian Society in Worcester had 500 members, only 50 of which had been hard cases. See Dragon, page 15. Chapter: Abe Lincoln and Good Press. One sympathetic guest speaker was Abraham Lincoln, who, on February 22, 1842, addressed the Springfield, Illinois branch with these words: "In my judgment, such of us who have never fallen victims have been spared more by the absence of appetite than from any mental or moral superiority over those who have." The group's results were so remarkable, and often with those considered beyond redemption, that they were sometimes referred to as the Resurrection Society. The press of the day gave the society uncounted columns of publicity. See A.A. Grapevine, July 1945. History offers good lesson for A.A. The drunkard has taken the cause in his own hands, analyzed his disease, and wrought his own cure. Baltimore Sun. Never in history had an alcohol abstinence movement taken off so explosively. At the height of the movement, more than 600,000 pledges were signed. Thousands marched in Washingtonian temperance parades, and a weekly newspaper was launched. See Dragon, page 15. Chapter: Martha Anon and Martha Teen. Special meetings were organized for women and children. The first Martha Washington Society was May 12, 1844, in New York. The goals were to provide moral and material support to reforming inebriates and to provide special support to female inebriates and to the wives and children of inebriates. Although other temperance societies were quite conscious of the social class and reputation of those they recruited, the Martha Washington Societies extended support to some of the most disreputable members of their communities. One of their parade banners, Total Abstinence or No Husband, indicates that they may have scored a first in the use of detachment, loving or otherwise. Other temperance movement firsts were in helping inebriate women and in having females in leadership roles. Chapter: John Hawkins. As these successes were reported, requests for speakers flooded in from all over the country. Various pairs went on extended tours propelled by a single purpose: to spread the Washingtonian message of hope to the alcoholic. John Henry Hawkins, having lost 2 wives and a career as a hatter, was approached by his daughter, who begged him to not send her for more whiskey again. He joined the original Baltimore group 2 months after its founding. His organizational skills and charismatic speeches contributed to the spread of the movement. Hawkins made a profession of lecturing on the temperance circuit and held a paid position with the Massachusetts Temperance Society. See Dragon, page 17. Hawkins was convinced of the role of religion in long-term recovery and became a Methodist minister. He is said to have traveled in excess of 200,000 miles and delivered more than 5,000 speeches in the 18 years between his reformation and death. Chapter: John Go. John Go was popular during his drinking years. His imitations, stories, and songs brightened many a tavern and street corner. Through the years of his drinking, he descended from a light-hearted man of the town to a drunken buffoon. See Dragon, page 17. Touched by what he had heard at a temperance meeting in October 1842, he signed a pledge and almost immediately began a career as a speech maker. The former bookbinder had a flair for it. His emotional and highly dramatic presentations were in high demand. He was paid $2 for his first lecture, $10 per lecture in an 1844 tour of New York, and as much as $170 per lecture in the years following the Civil War, $2,800 in 2014 money. 30 years after signing the pledge, John Go has amassed a small fortune from his skills on the lecture stage. See Dragon, page 17. Go was not without relapses, the first possibly triggered by tincture of opium prescribed by his physician. He confessed to that particular fall and gained a new understanding of the insidious nature of addiction. However, after being found in a house of ill repute following a later relapse, his claim of being drugged and abducted by the enemies of temperance was less credible. Other Washingtonians disagreed with his advocacy of the legal prohibition of alcohol, and some colleagues accused him of exploiting temperance for his own financial gain. Some of this sprung from obvious jealousies over his legendary oratorical skills. On February 15, 1886, John Go collapsed and died while giving a speech. He was 69 years old. In his lifetime, he had traveled more than 450,000 miles and had delivered more than 8,600 temperance addresses. See Dragon, page 18. Chapter: Carrying the Message. Hawkins and Go, and others like them, carried the Washingtonian message across the nation. They shared openly and intensely the story of their lives before and after they quit drinking. In doing so, they inspired many to reach for a pledge card and to tell their own tales. Rehabilitated inebriates sought out others of their ilk who might be open to being inspired to a new way of living. Go also pushed religion and was especially high on the importance of a posture of humility. Key leaders of the Washingtonian movement, such as John Hawkins and John Go, continued their travels long after the movement's demise. Hawkins and Go were among the first recovered alcoholics working in paid roles to carry the message of hope to other alcoholics. See Dragon, page 19. Chapter: Demise and Lessons for AA. As quickly as it had come about, so did it dematerialize. By 1845, the Washingtonian movement's energy was spent. Almost none of the Washingtonian societies were active beyond 1847, with the exception of those in Boston. See Dragon, page 19. Even to this day, some mystery surrounds the downfall. The multiplicity of possible contributory causes are excellently reviewed in Mr. White's Slaying the Dragon, the history of addiction treatment in America. Although they lacked an unambiguously articulated ideology, their core activities are clearly identifiable. The Washingtonian program of recovery consisted of public confession, public commitment, visits from older members, economic assistance, continued participation in experience sharing, acts of service towards other alcoholics, sober entertainment. See Dragon, page 16. The criticisms are varied, and in some instances reflect the prejudices or agendas of the detractors. Those favoring legal prohibition of alcohol saw moral suasion as inherently inadequate as a strategy. Religious leaders attacked the lack of religion and the reliance on social camaraderie. Some even went so far as leveling charges of humanism. Chapter: Land of Goshen. A Michigan author of a Grapevine article published in July 1945 brought knowledge of the Washingtonians, at that time an arcane bit of recovery history, to the attention of Bill Wilson and other AA members. Regarding the ruination of the group, he wrote, "Politicians looked hungrily at its swelling membership. Some of them climbed aboard the wagon, and they helped to wreck local groups through their efforts to line up votes." Lesson for AA. The essayist's personal agenda was reflected in his own summary of the Washingtonians' real problem, that its organizers thought they could get along without a higher power. Lesson for AA. As speakers attempted to outdo each other, there were charges of sensationalism and even fabrication. Meetings were criticized for vulgarity, and instances of relapse were particularly damaging. Chapter: As Bill Sees It. The article above prompted Bill W. to explore, then weigh in on the Washingtonians and the Lessons article. In the very next issue, quote, "Those who read the July Grapevine were startled, then sobered by the account which it carried of the Washingtonian movement." End quote. AA Grapevine, August 1945. Modesty, one good plank for public relations. He found the reports of triumphal parades in Boston to be overdone self-advertising. The stories of members who were hungry politicians reflected dangerous personal ambition, and also injudicious was the unnecessary group participation in controversial issues, such as the abolition of slavery. See Modesty. The Washingtonians were too cocksure, maybe, couldn't learn from others, and became competitive instead of cooperative. See Modesty. A crucial error was made in the Society's deviation from its initial prime directive. The original strong and simple group purpose was thus dissipated in fruitless controversy and divergent aims. On the issue of the general prescription of alcohol, members and spokespersons debated each other, the prohibitionists alienating manufacturers and distributors in the process. Ultimately, it was a death blow that there was no national public relations policy which all members were willing to follow. Chapter: Summary. The Washingtonian Society contributed many firsts. It was the first widely available mass mutual aid society organized by and for alcoholics in American history. Washingtonian legacies included the importance of maintaining a focus on the welfare and reformation of the individual alcoholic, the potential power of a personal and public commitment to total abstinence from alcohol, the benefit of regular sober fellowship, the power of experience sharing, the use of recovered alcoholics as charismatic speakers and in service work to other alcoholics, and the use of a spiritual religious foundation for sustained recovery. Not part of the official program, but incorporated by key Washingtonian leaders. See Dragon, page 21. The lessons to AA were in the greater part from an examination of the Washingtonians' errors. AA's traditions were formed, in the main, from mistakes made and lessons learned. Those who cannot remember the past are condemned to repeat it. George Santiano. History has value. About the author, Bob K. Bob K. lives in the metropolitan Toronto area and has been a sober member of Alcoholics Anonymous for 24 years and an out-of-the-closet atheist for that entire time. He has been a regular contributor to the AA Agnostic website for almost 5 years and, in January 2015, published Key Players in AA History. In 2013, he co-founded the Whitby Freethinkers Meeting. The original print version of this article, The Washingtonian Society by Bob K., may be found on the website aabeyondbelief.com in the AA History section dated January 6, 2016. This audio presentation was recorded on January 25, 2017. For more articles and podcasts, simply go to our YouTube channel or SoundCloud and search for